everyone, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make evolving morphing basslines in style of Jon Hopkins. As usual, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check it out there because they'll be available. And let's dive in. So I'm going to start with the bass here. This is the loop you heard in the intro, and this is the bass on its own. So what we have going on here is it's two layers, and then they're grouped together, and there's a bit of processing on the group. I'm going to start with the first layer, which is this one. It sounds like this. So this is kind of the more audible one. This is more like in the mid-range, whereas this one is more of a sub. So the way I made this first one was with operator, so we're doing some FM synthesis. What I have here is I have a saw 64 wave going into this triangle wave. And then we have a bit of white noise as well at the end of it. And then the triangle wave is detuned a little bit. It just gives it a bit of like dissonance. It's kind of similar to like how a respace gets like that nice movement when you detune it. Similar thing here, just with FM. So yeah, and then after that I have those going into a low pass filter, which is set like this, so you can see the frequency is pretty low, and we have an envelope on there, so it's kind of like. That's how I'm doing that pattern, essentially. Like, you can see I programmed the pattern into the MIDI. I didn't just automate it. And then this envelope just keeps resetting every time one of these notes is hit. So yeah, and then you can see I have the filter frequency automated. But if you look at this, it's not moving too much. Like, it's really subtle what this is doing. And that's kind of the key for this whole sound. This is like the first kind of main point I want to touch on is subtle automation. You'll see throughout this, I've automated a lot of different things. But it's all about just doing it like a little bit. Like, if you listen to Jon Hopkins tracks, like especially, you know, like Open Eye Signal, for example, or like Everything Connected, like these different ones that have these super evolving bass lines, it's a lot of things being automated very minimally. So that was kind of the idea behind the very small filter automation there. So then after the operator, I have a tiny bit of chorus. This isn't doing much. You can see the dry wet is only at 23%. If I turn it off, and then back on, like I said, you can see it's very subtle. It's just giving it a little bit of kind of, I guess, like a detune type of feel, very similar to turning up the fine tune on that second oscillator there. I felt like it gave it a cool texture, so that's why I have it on there. So then after that, I have the saturator, which is probably one of the most important parts of the sound. That's another thing I wanted to touch on, is sort of combining FM synthesis with saturation, which if you watch my videos, you know I do that very frequently. But it's a really, really good way to recreate this kind of sound because it allows you to be very subtle. The thing is, like, if you just have a saw wave with a low-pass filter on it, you have to do a lot to that filter to make it sound cool with the saw. Like, you gotta automate it a lot. You gotta go from all the way down to all the way up because that's the only thing you can automate. But when you sort of set it up to be in multiple steps like this, where it's like the filter frequency plus the FM and then the saturator and then like all this other stuff, it allows you to be more subtle. So that's kind of the goal here of like doing things like this with FM synthesis and saturation and just sort of shaping the sound that way. So what I did with this was I have some drive. It's at 10.3 dB. Then I have the wave shaper down here for this color. You can see I set the bass frequency like that, and I turned the depth all the way down. Just kind of what sounded good here. And then I played around with these things. So you can see over here, I added a bit of automation to this depth actually on the wave shaper. So you can see that's like coming up a bit. And again, it's just like the small things. Like, we're just sort of slowly building this sound up. So then after the saturator, I have a bit of grain delay, actually, which may seem like an unorthodox choice, but I felt like it just gave it a cool texture. Like, you can see, I don't have it too high. The dry wet is only at 20%. The time is set there, so it's pretty quick. Really the main goal of this one was just to have the spray, because the spray gives it, like, a really cool texture. Whereas if I turn it off, again, it's subtle. I feel like it's adding kind of a cool, weird, sort of like textured resonance to it, if that makes any sense. So I left it on there, and it does some stuff with like the group processing as well, as you'll see. I'll explain a little bit later. So the next thing we have here is the sub, which sounds like this. So So this is just playing under the other bass, and you can see this isn't really like a perfect like sine wave type of sub or anything. So this is kind of like another thing I want to talk about is using like more sort of harmonically rich sounds. So for example, for this sub I could have just gone for like a triangle wave or a sine wave or a low pass square or something like that. But you can hear I made something a little bit more complex with the saturation and then with some FM, and it just adds to the overall thing. It helps actually, from what I found, to sort of glue the mid bass to the sub when you have your sub have a lot more kind of harmonic content because they feel closer. Like if this is just a pure sine wave, it doesn't really sound like it would fit with this. So obviously, just getting sounds that kind of sound like they were made to work together, it's probably a much better plan there. So what we have going on is I have a sine wave, and then doing some FM with a triangle wave where the fine tuning is set there. So this one you can hear it a little bit more pronounced, but it's a similar thing where it's sort of like that detune effect. If I turn the fine tuning down, it just sounded kind of weird. It was a little bit too straightforward. So when I add that back on, you can hear they sort of work together a little bit better. So then after that, I have the saturator, and this is very similar to the one that is on the main bass. I have the drive up, and then I'm using the wave shaper down here. And then you can see on this one, I set it like this, and then I automated the curve. But I only did it a very little bit. It's just kind of like going down and then back up. Again, it's all about like slow, subtle automations and having a lot of them that add up to one big thing essentially. So then on the group here, I have another saturator. As like I was saying, this one is kind of doing like the final shaping on the sound. If we turn it off, it's still just a little bit too like basic and not really, I don't know, it just doesn't really have that like polish to it. When we add this on there, between the drive and then the stuff that's going on with the wave shaper, I feel like it really glues everything together nicely. So on this one, I automated the curve as well as the period. So you can see kind of, again, very subtle automations here. Like on this curve automation, it just goes up quickly and then back down and then up a little bit more. And then same thing with the period. It just goes up like slightly. Again, we just want a lot of very subtle things that are going to add up to one big picture with a lot of movement. So then after that, I just have a sidechain to this kick. Pretty straightforward, but that is actually a very important part of this kind of track, if I will speak on that for a moment, because like part of that groove you're getting is because the bass is really like bouncing off of the kick. If we turn off the sidechain, I guess that's kind of cool in some ways, but it definitely doesn't work as well as that, and this is definitely the way that Jon Hopkins does it. So then I'll talk about the drums really quick. It's pretty simple. I just set up like a small little groove to play with that bass. We have like a kick, which is just dry. It's just like a nice Jon Hopkins-esque kick. Then I have this hi-hat, which is also pretty straightforward. I just have a little bit of echo on it. You're just getting like that if I turn it off. Yeah, it just makes a lot more sense. And then after that, I have this shaker. So this is subtle. I have a sidechain to the kick. I have a little bit of a low pass filter on it. And then finally, we just have some background noise, just to give it some atmosphere. So, yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Like I said, the main things you want to think about are like just the subtle automations that are all going to add up to make one big, very moving and motion heavy picture. And then like the stuff I was saying with using the sidechain to sort of give the bass a bit of groove. If you follow those two main things, you really can't go wrong. So like I said, that's going to be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. My social media is on the screen right now. Make sure to check that out, and you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.